I wasn't supposed to hear him. That's the thing about fate or coincidence or whatever you want to call it when your entire life changes because you forgot to download a playlist. I was driving through Denver on a Tuesday morning, stuck in traffic on I-25, scrolling through radio static because my Spotify had glitched out somewhere near the state line. NPR was doing a segment on municipal bonds. Classic rock was playing the same Eagles song they'd played an hour ago. And then I landed on talk radio, the Dave Ramsey Show. I'd heard of it. My dad used to listen religiously back when he was trying to dig us out of credit card debt in our two-bedroom apartment in Tucson. But I hadn't tuned in since I was a kid. I was about to keep scrolling when I heard the voice. "Yeah, Dave, thanks for taking my call." It was a man, mid-30s maybe. His voice was low, rough around the edges, like he'd been awake for 3 days straight. There was something in it, something raw and honest and so completely devastated that I stopped reaching for the dial. "So what's going on?" Dave asked, in that steady, no-nonsense tone he's famous for. A pause, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "I'm about to lose everything." I don't know why, but my hands tightened on the steering wheel. "My company," he continued, "it's a health tech startup. We make wearable VR headsets for chronic pain management, neurotherapy. It's good work, Dave. It helps people. But my last investor pulled out yesterday. I've got 48 hours before I have to let my team go. Maybe 72 if I can stall the lease on our lab space." There was no self-pity in his voice, just exhaustion. The kind that comes from fighting a battle you know you're about to lose. "How much debt are we talking?" Dave asked. "Personally, about 200,000. The company's another 300 on top of that. We were 60 days from a Series A. We had interest, real interest, but the trial results got delayed because of an FDA paperwork snafu. And our lead investor got spooked, said the risk profile changed, pulled the whole round. So you're telling me you're $500,000 in the hole, and you've got no path to revenue?" "Not unless this final trial works. We've got 12 patients lined up. It's happening in 2 weeks. But even if it's successful, I don't have the cash to scale. I'm out of runway, Dave. I'm out of moves." I could hear him breathing, could hear the weight of 5 years collapsing in real time. "Why'd you call in?" Dave asked, softer now. Another pause. "Because I needed to tell someone I tried. That's all. I needed someone to know I gave it everything." That's when I pulled over. I don't know what possessed me. I'm Ivy Corbett, 33 years old, venture capital analyst at a mid-tier firm in Boulder. I spend my days evaluating pitch decks and running financial models on companies I'll never meet. I'm good at my job because I don't get emotional. I don't fall for founder stories or mission statements. I look at data. I look at market fit. I make rational decisions. But sitting there on I-25 listening to this man's voice crack under the weight of his failure, I did something completely irrational. I wrote down everything he said. His company name, Resolve VR. The tech, wearable headsets for chronic pain. The trial, 12 patients, 2 weeks out. FDA delay, investor pullout, Series A interest. And then I sat there, staring at my notes, wondering what the hell I was doing. If you're listening to this, then you've ever had one of those moments where you hear something or see someone, and your brain just refuses to let it go, that maybe you'll understand, or maybe you'll think I'm insane. Both are fair. Either way, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get a lot more complicated. 2 weeks later, I was standing outside a converted warehouse in Boulder's industrial district, holding a printed term sheet and seriously reconsidering my life choices. Finding him wasn't hard. A quick search for Resolve VR and chronic pain headsets led me to a bare-bones website with a contact form that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2019. The address listed was this warehouse. No photos, no team bios. Just a mission statement that read, "We believe pain shouldn't define your life." I called the number listed. It rang 4 times before a guy picked up, sounding annoyed. "Yeah?" "Hi, I'm looking for the founder. Owen Hastings? Who's asking? My name is Ivy Corbett. I'm a venture capital analyst at a mid-tier firm in Boulder. I'd like to discuss a potential investment in Resolve VR. Silence. Then, we're not taking meetings right now. I know, that's why I'm coming to you. More silence. Lady, I don't know what you heard, but we're basically shut down. There's nothing to invest in. Is Owen there? He's in the middle of something. Then I'll wait. I heard him sigh. You're wasting your time. That's my time to waste. Another beat. Then, grudgingly, fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. He hung up. And now here I was, standing outside the warehouse at 8 a.m., clutching a printed term sheet I spent 3 days putting together, and a coffee I was too nervous to drink. The door opened. The guy who answered wasn't Owen. He was younger, late 20s maybe, his dark hair tied back in a bun, and the kind of perpetual scowl that suggested he didn't sleep much. You the VC? Ivy Corbett. He looked me up and down, unimpressed. Cade Tennyson, lead engineer. Come on. I followed him in. The warehouse was exactly what you'd expect from a startup on its last legs. Exposed brick, concrete floors, a few folding tables covered in circuit boards and tangled cables. There was a small kitchenette that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks. In the corner, surrounded by monitors and half-disassembled VR headsets, was a man who could only be Owen Hastings. He didn't look up when I walked in. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested he used to work out but hadn't had time in months. His hair was dark and messy, like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. His face was sharp, focused, the kind of face that made you think he was solving 3 problems at once. And his voice. God, his voice. Kay, did you check the calibration on Unit 7? Yeah, it's stable. We've got a visitor. Owen finally looked up. His eyes were gray, the kind of gray that looked blue in certain light, and when they landed on me, I felt the full weight of a man who had been fighting for 5 years and had nothing left to give. Can I help you? He asked, nodding kindly, just distant. I held up the term sheet. My name is Ivy Corbett. I'm a venture capital analyst with Crescent Point Ventures. I'd like to offer you $500,000 in seed funding for Resolve VR. He blinked. Cade blinked. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Owen stood up, slowly, like he wasn't sure he'd heard me right. I'm sorry, what? $500,000. Seed funding. Enough to keep your team intact, run your trial, and buy you time to secure a proper Series A. He stared at me. Why? Because I think your technology has potential. You don't know anything about our technology. I know you've been working on wearable VR headsets that use immersive neural therapy to interrupt chronic pain signals. I know your last investor pulled out due to an FDA delay. I know you've got a 12-patient trial starting in 2 weeks. And I know if that trial is successful, you'll have proof of concept strong enough to attract serious Series A interest. Owen's jaw tightened. How do you know all that? I hesitated. This was the moment where I had to decide how honest I was going to be. I heard you, I said quietly, on the Dave Ramsey Show 2 weeks ago. You called in. His expression shifted. Confusion, then something darker. Embarrassment maybe, or anger. You tracked me down because of a radio call? Yes. That's insane. I know. I don't even know you. I know that too. He took a step closer. So what is this? You some kind of disaster capitalist? You get off on funding companies right before they collapse? No, I said, holding his gaze. I'm someone who heard you say you gave it everything, and I don't think you should have to walk away because of bad timing. Kay let out a low whistle. Dude, she's either a saint or completely unhinged. Owen ignored me. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Why? He asked again, quieter this time. And that was the question, wasn't it? Why had I pulled over? Why had I written everything down? Why had I spent 2 weeks researching his company, putting together a term sheet, convincing my firm to let me use my personal discretion fund? I could have told him it was a good investment, that the market for non-opioid pain management was underserved, that his tech had real potential if the trial worked. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was simpler and so much more terrifying. Because something in your voice made me want to fight for you, I said. Owen stared at me for a long moment. Then he looked down at the term sheet in my hand. You're serious? Completely. Another beat. Then, finally, okay, let's talk. The next 60 days were a blur. Owen agreed to the funding, but only after grilling me for 3 hours on everything from my firm's track record to my personal investment philosophy. Kate sat in the corner the whole time, arms crossed, occasionally interjecting with questions that were clearly designed to see if I'd crack under pressure. I didn't. By the end of the meeting, Owen had signed the term sheet, and I had officially become the lead investor in a company that was either going to change chronic pain treatment forever or bankrupt me. The trial was set to begin in 10 days. 12 patients, 12 headsets, 14 days of monitored sessions. Owen had designed the environments himself, each one tailored to the patient's specific pain profile and psychological needs. One woman with fibromyalgia got a meadow at sunrise, the kind of soft, golden light that made you feel like the world was safe. A man with nerve damage from a car accident got a lake surrounded by mountains, still and quiet and endless. I watched the first session from the observation room. Owen was inside with the clinical team, adjusting settings, monitoring brain activity, taking notes like his life depended on it, which, in a way, he did. The woman in the meadow, her name was Carla, had been living with chronic pain for 8 years. She tried everything: physical therapy, medications, spinal injections. Nothing worked for more than a few weeks. When they put the headset on her, I saw her shoulders tense. Then, slowly, they relaxed. Her breathing evened out. And when the session ended 30 minutes later, she looked up at Owen with tears in her eyes. "I didn't feel it," she whispered, "for the first time in 8 years. Owen just nodded, but I could see his hands shaking as he made notes on his tablet. Cade caught my eye through the glass. He didn't say anything, didn't have to. It was working. By day 7, the results were undeniable. 11 out of 12 patients reported significant pain reduction. Some said 50%, others said more. The data was clean. The neural scans showed exactly what Owen had theorized. The headsets were interrupting pain signals at the sensory processing level, giving patients relief without drugs, without side effects, without the risks that came with opioids. Cable news picked it up. A local Denver station ran a segment. New VR technology offers hope for chronic pain sufferers. Then a health tech blog. Then a bigger outlet. By day 10, we had 3 venture capital firms asking for meetings. Owen was cautious. He didn't want to celebrate until the trial was complete, but I could see it in his eyes. The relief, the vindication, the proof that 5 years of his life hadn't been for nothing. We were in the warehouse late one night reviewing the data for the 100th time when he finally let himself exhale. "We did it," he said, almost to himself. "You did it," I corrected. He looked at me. "No, we did it. You kept this thing alive when I couldn't. Don't downplay that." I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled. And he smiled back, and for a moment, everything felt possible. Then Margot showed up. I didn't know who she was at first. She walked into the warehouse on day 12 like she owned the place, Tall, polished, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my rent. She had dark hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail, and the kind of confidence that came from years of being the smartest person in the room. Cade saw her first. Oh, hell no. Owen's head snapped up, and the look on his face. It wasn't anger, it wasn't surprise. It was resignation. "Margot," he said quietly. She smiled. Not warm, just knowing. "Hi, Owen." I looked between them, confused. Cade leaned over and muttered, "That's his ex-wife." Oh. Margot's eyes flicked to me. "And you are?" "Ivy Corbett, lead investor." "Ah," she nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed something she'd suspected. The woman who saved the day. There was an edge to her voice. Not hostile, just evaluating. Owen stood up. "What are you doing here, Margot?" "I still own 30% of this company, Owen. I have a right to know how the trial went." "You could have called." "I wanted to see it for myself." She walked further into the warehouse, taking in the setup, the headsets, the monitors, the data. "It worked," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Yeah," Owen said. "It worked." She turned back to him. "I'm happy for you." And here's the thing. I believed her. There was no bitterness in her voice, no resentment, just something that looked a lot like sadness. "I knew it would," she continued. "I always knew you'd figure it out. That was never the problem." Owen's jaw tightened. "Margot, the problem," she said, cutting him off gently, "was that you couldn't stop, even when it was killing you, even when it was killing us." The air in the room shifted. Cade muttered something about checking the calibration on Unit 3 and disappeared into the back. I should have left too, should have given them space, but I didn't, because I needed to hear this. "I'm not here to rehash the past," Margot said. "I'm here because I saw the news coverage, I saw the trial results, and I wanted to make sure you weren't about to do it again." "Do what?" "Sacrifice everything for this company." Owen didn't respond. Margot's gaze shifted to me. "You're the investor." "Yes." "How long have you been working with him?" "About 2 months." She nodded slowly. "Then you've seen it. The way he works. The way he doesn't stop. The way he'll burn himself out if no one makes him take a breath." I didn't answer, because she was right. "Margot," said Owen, turning back to her, "you did it. You built something incredible. Don't let it consume you again." And then she left. Just like that. The warehouse felt too quiet after she was gone. Owen stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. Then he looked at me. "You want to ask?" "It's not my business." "She was my ex-COO," he said. "We got married young, built this company together. And then, I don't know, somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing her, stopped seeing anything except the work. She left 2 years ago. I didn't fight for her. I just let her go." I didn't know what to say. "She's not wrong," he continued. "I do burn out. I do sacrifice everything. It's the only way I know how to do this." "Maybe it doesn't have to be," I said quietly. He looked at me, really looked at me. "You think I can change?" "I think you already have." He didn't respond, but something in his expression shifted, and I knew in that moment that we were standing on the edge of something neither of us was ready to name. The trial ended on day 14. Final results: 11 out of 12 patients experienced sustained pain reduction. Average decrease: 42%. No adverse effects. Clean neural data. It was everything we needed for a Series A. By the end of the week, we had 5 firms interested. Real interest, the kind that came with term sheets and valuations that made my head spin. Owen should have been celebrating. Instead, he was standing in the warehouse at midnight staring at the whiteboard like it held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. I found him there, still wearing the same hoodie he'd had on that morning. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't turn around. "Yeah, you're a terrible liar." He smiled faintly. "Margot used to say that too." I walked over, stood next to him. "What's going on?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "What if I mess this up?" "The Series A?" "No, this." He gestured vaguely at the warehouse, at the headsets, at everything we'd built. "What if I get the funding and I do exactly what Margot said? What if I burn out? What if I lose the people that matter because I can't stop working?" I looked at him, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the fear that had been there all along, buried under the desperation and the hope. "Owen," I said quietly, "you're not the same person you were 2 years ago." "How do you know?" "Because 2 years ago, you would have shut down the company and walked away rather than ask for help. And you didn't. You called into a radio show at 2 a.m. and told a stranger you tried. That's not someone who doesn't care about people. That's someone who cares too much." He looked at me. And in that moment, standing in the dim light of the warehouse with the hum of machines around us and the weight of 60 days between us, I realized something. I wasn't just invested in his company. I was invested in him. And that was the most dangerous thing I could have done. If you've made it this far, you may think you already know how this story ends. But stick with me, because the next part is where everything changes. Part 2. The Series A closed 3 weeks later, $4 million, led by a health tech fund out of San Francisco, enough to scale production, hire a full clinical team, and start FDA approval processes. Owen should have been on top of the world. Instead, he looked like a man who's just signed away his soul. We were sitting in his office, a converted corner of the warehouse that he'd finally cleaned up now that we had actual investors coming through, reviewing the final terms. Cade was out celebrating with the rest of the team. Owen had stayed behind. So had I. "This is good," I said, closing the folder. "This is everything you needed." "Yeah." I looked at him. "You don't sound happy." "I am." "Owen." He sighed, leaned back in his chair. "It's just different now. There are board meetings, quarterly targets, investor expectations. It's not just me in a warehouse anymore. That's called growth." "I know. So what's the problem?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, "What happened to us?" I blanked. "What?" "You and me. What happens now?" My chest tightened. I'm still your investor. That doesn't change." "That's not what I'm asking." He stood up, walked over to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the warehouse floor. "The last 2 months," he said quietly, "have been the best 2 months of my life. Not because of the trial, not because of the funding, because of you." I didn't know what to say. He continued, "You showed up out of nowhere. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You worked 18-hour days because you cared, not because you had to. And somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about you as my investor. I started thinking about you as..." He trailed off. "As what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to look at me. "As the person I don't want to lose." The air between us felt electric. I should have stepped back, should have reminded him that this was unprofessional, that I was his investor, that there were rules. But I didn't, because he was right. The last 2 months had been the best 2 months of my life, too. "Owen," I said carefully, "if we do this, if we cross that line, everything changes. The board will have opinions, the other investors will have opinions. It could complicate everything we've built." "I know. And if it doesn't work out..." I know, he said again, stepping closer, but I'm tired of playing it safe. I'm tired of choosing the work over the people who matter. And you matter, Ivy, more than I know how to say. God, his eyes. I'd spent 2 months staring into those eyes across conference tables and late night coffee runs. I'd memorized the way they looked when he was focused, when he was exhausted, when he was hopeful. But I'd never seen them look like this. Like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "This is a terrible idea," I whispered. "Probably. We're gonna regret it. Maybe." "I'm serious, Owen. This could ruin everything." He smiled, just a little. "Then let's ruin it together." And before I could talk myself out of it, he kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't tentative. It was 2 months of late nights and unspoken words and the kind of chemistry that only happens when two people have been circling each other without admitting it. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. "Okay," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Okay?" "Yeah, okay. Let's ruin it together." He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that I hadn't heard from him before, and pulled me close. And for the first time in 2 months, I let myself stop thinking about term sheets and clinical trials and investor expectations. I just let myself feel. But next 3 months were chaos. Good chaos, the kind that comes with scaling a company from a warehouse operation to a legitimate health tech player. Owen hired a full team, engineers, clinicians, a COO who actually knew what she was doing. Production ramped up, the FDA approval process started, cable news did follow-up segments. And through it all, Owen and I navigated the impossible balance of being professional in public and something else entirely in private. We were careful. No PDA at board meetings, no obvious signs that we were together, but Cade knew. Of course Cade knew. He'd figured it out within a week and had been giving Owen hell about it ever since. "Just don't screw this up," he'd say to Owen one night, pulling him aside. "She's the best thing that's happened to this company, and to you." Owen just nodded. "I know." But it wasn't easy. There were nights when Owen worked until 3 a.m, and I'd find him asleep at his desk. There were investor calls that went badly, production delays, clinical setbacks. And there were moments when I'd see that look in his eyes, the one that Margot had warned me about, the one that said he was about to sacrifice everything for the company again. One night, about 4 months in, I found him in the lab at midnight, staring at a prototype that wasn't working. "Owen," I said gently, "come to bed." "I can't. This calibration is off, and if we don't fix it before the next trial, it'll still be broken tomorrow. You need sleep. I need this to work." "Owen." He didn't look at me. "Ivy, I can't afford to slow down. We've got investors watching. The FDA is breathing down our necks. If we miss this deadline, then we miss it and we figure it out. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." He finally looked up. "You don't understand. I've spent 5 years building this. I can't let it fail now." "It's not going to fail. You don't know that." "I do," I said, walking over to him, "because you're not doing this alone anymore. You've got a team. You've got investors who believe in you. And you've got me. So stop acting like the weight of the world is on your shoulders." He stared at me. "I'm serious, Owen. You're allowed to take a breath. You're allowed to trust that the people around you can handle things while you rest. You're allowed to be human." His jaw tightened. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail, and we figure out what's next." "That easy?" "No," I said, "but easier than burning out and losing everything because you're too stubborn to ask for help." He closed his eyes, took a long, shaky breath. Then he stood up, walked over to me, and pulled me into his arms. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "Do what?" "Let someone in. Trust that they'll stay." My chest ached. "I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. He pulled back just enough to look at me. Ivy, I'm not Margot, I said. I'm not leaving because the work gets hard. I'm not leaving because you're obsessed with this company. I'm here because I chose to be. And I'm staying because I choose to stay. Every day. That's the deal. His eyes searched mine. And then, very quietly, he said, I love you. The words hung in the air between us. I should have been scared, should have reminded myself that this was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But I wasn't, because I knew. I'd known since that night in the kitchenette when he thanked me for believing in him. I love you too, I said. And when he kissed me, it felt like the world finally made sense. The FDA approval came through 6 months later. Resolve VR became one of the first virtual reality medical devices approved for chronic pain management. The stock market went insane. Health tech blogs called it a game changer. Cable news did segments about the future of non-opioid pain treatment. Owen was on magazine covers, podcasts, panel discussions, and through it all, he stayed grounded. Because he'd learned something in those 2 months when his company was on the brink of collapse. Success didn't mean anything if you lost yourself in the process. We celebrated the FDA approval with the whole team. Champagne, terrible catered food, Cade giving a speech that was equal parts heartfelt and sarcastic. And later that night, when everyone had gone home, Owen and I sat on the roof of the warehouse, looking out at the Denver skyline. You did it, I said. We did it. I smiled. Yeah, we did. He looked at me. You know what the crazy part is? What? I almost gave up. 2 months before you showed up, I was ready to walk away. And if I had, I never would have met you. Guess fate had other plans. Or you did. I laughed. Yeah, I guess I did. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small. A ring. My heart stopped. Owen? I know, he said quickly. I know this is insane. I know we've only been together for 6 months. I know there are a million reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I also know that you're the reason I'm sitting here right now. You're the reason this company exists. You're the reason I didn't give up. And I don't want to spend another day without knowing that you're mine, officially. I stared at him, at the ring, at the man who'd call into a radio show at 2 a.m. because he needed someone to know he tried. Yes, I said. He blinked. Yes? Yes, absolutely yes. He laughed, relieved, ecstatic, and slid the ring onto my finger. And then he kissed me, and the city lights blurred around us, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to take a risk that mattered. A year later, Resolve VR was valued at $200 million. Owen hired a full executive team, stepped back from the day-to-day operations, started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. We got married in a small ceremony in the mountains, just close friends. Cade was Owen's best man. Margot sent flowers and a note that read, I'm glad you found someone who sees you. And I did. I saw him. Not the CEO, not the founder, not the man on the magazine covers. I saw the guy who called into a radio show because he needed someone to know he tried. The guy who spent 5 years fighting for something he believed in. The guy who let me in when he didn't know how. Looking back, I don't know if I believe in fate. I don't know if that radio call was coincidence or something bigger. But I do know this. Sometimes the best investments aren't the ones that make sense on paper. Sometimes they're the ones you make because a voice on the radio stopped you cold and you realize that walking your way would be the biggest mistake of your life. Owen and I built something together.
not just a company, a life. And it started with a terrible idea, a term sheet, and the risk you only take when you're tired of playing it safe. If this story hit you the way I hoped it did, if you stayed all through to the end and felt something, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment. Tell me what risk you've taken that changed your life. Because stories like this, they're not just entertainment. They're reminders that sometimes the best things happen when you stop waiting for permission and just show up. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.